I should begin by introducing myself. If you've been to a webinar before, welcome back. If not, my name is Ashling and I will be moderating today's session. I am based in the Netherlands and I'm a customer value manager here at Easygenerator. And today I am joined by Louise and Tommy, who are going to share their insights about L&D, what's changed this year or in the past few years, and what's coming as well in 2026. So I think it's best if we let them introduce themselves. Louise, you're first on my screen, so if you'd like to get us started, that would be great.
Hi, thanks, Ashling. Hi, everyone. I'm Louise Puddifoot. I run a leadership development company called Willow Puddifoot, and we work with organisations to help them build confident, capable leaders at different levels. So a lot of my work focuses on behaviour change, things like how people communicate, how they make decisions, how they adapt, how they lead other people through change. So this year, I've spent a lot of time looking at how AI is impacting work and what it's meant in particular for managers and leaders, and what it's going to mean in the future. So really looking forward to discussing those shifts with you all today.
Thanks, Louise. I'm excited to discuss those as well. And Tommy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Tommy, the CEO here at Easygenerator, calling in from Dubai, sunny, hot Dubai. And basically, most people probably know what we do. We're a platform that help employees turn their knowledge into powerful learning content, obviously using AI and making it easy for subject matter experts to share what they know so that then the teams can learn from each other. Obviously, everything fast and easy.
Thanks, Tommy. And rubbing it in, I know a few of us are cold, so we'll try not focus on the weather today. I think that gives us a good place to start. So as mentioned, we will be speaking about what's changed for learning and development, what's coming in 2026. I think it's a good time for this discussion as we are approaching the end of 2025. It's a nice moment to pause and to reflect on how much has changed this year for learning and development, and of course what those shifts mean as we move into 2026. So we have things like AI, new skills demands, talent shortages, a new generation entering the workplace, which have all pushed learning teams to reinvent how they operate. And as well, learner expectations are evolving just as quickly. So I think, the role of L&D has never been more important and perhaps more dynamic. So today we'll look at what stood out in 2025, how the learner mindset is shifting, and the trends that are going to shape the workplace learning in the year ahead. We are definitely going to have a forward-looking discussion today, and it's really exciting to have you, Louise and Tommy, join us to discuss. So feel free to follow along, pop your questions, insights, predictions into the chat. And of course, if there's anything you'd like us to discuss in 2026, leave those topics for us there as well. To kick things off, let's maybe take a moment to reflect. Tommy, I'd love to know what stood out to you the most about workplace learning in 2025.
Yeah, I think 2025 is a reflection. I think there's an interesting year when, we've been a couple of years now into AI. It feels like the dust is settling on it and we kind of finding our avenues and lanes of applicable use cases. But it was also the time where I think a lot of companies were struggling to hire for talent that was needed to fulfill the jobs. A lot of the AI has taken over the mundane, repetitive, easier data entry level tasks. And hence it was mostly a moment to also look inward, the existing talent pool. Interesting terms like upskilling and reskilling have surfaced all over the place. And I think it's an exciting time also to, just understand a little bit of the concept of what that actually means. But I also agree with you with the argument you made that the L&D has the function of that learning and development has elevated to a very significant, more strategic position. I can confirm that from the C-suite that more and more people are thinking about this as more of a strategic topic. It's not a nice to have. It's not a thing to just measure in hours. It's more like about impact now. I think that's really what being looked for. CEOs are being tasked now to actually look for the impact, to be looking at the measurable impact that employees will have. And therefore, they also need to look into the input of what they need to be upskilling, reskilling their existing teams. And I think that's exactly what we've seen in the past. So there's an exciting evolution of new applicable use cases and tools surfacing. And I think we're at Easygenerator obviously taking a very optimistic view on everything with AI that's being powered with AI. You hear terms like co-pilots all over the place. For us, it could be maybe something like co-authoring, where it comes to like the actual co-pilot that sits next to you and becomes your smart assistant, a smart agent that helps, especially when it comes to authoring and also course creation, these elements that you do have a smart person that is sitting almost next to you, available anytime, 24/7, to support you with that. So I think that's also a very interesting time. So all these interactive features that are perfect for upskilling and reskilling, enhanced course creation, that's another element that we focused on. So think of like scenarios and walkthroughs, scenario walkthroughs, using rich media, video, voice, all these interesting things that are popping up and are finding their right spot in this very strategic moment. So things like just-in-time learning, right? ChatGPT with, I think, 810 million monthly active users have paved the way. You can see a clear path of the ChatGPT usage, mostly for consumers and for consumer-like cases. In the enterprise or in business, we still need to find an applicable use case here, but you see a lot of people applying these kind of solutions for enhancing their workflow. And so it's been overall, I think, a very exciting year, and very much looking forward to how this will play in 2026.
Yeah, 100%. I like how you mentioned AI and skills. I think, yeah, this year, maybe the buzzword was perhaps skills, or at least from my point of view. Whereas if we were having this conversation in 2023, it definitely would have been AI, but perhaps AI is here to stay, or we're already there. We'll see how the conversation continues. But Louise, I'm really interested. Is there anything else that you've noticed? What stood out to you in 2025 in terms of e-learning or learning trends?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with the skills piece that you mentioned. I think from the kind of functionality perspective, absolutely, it's been a really exciting year. I think we've seen so many new functionalities come through as a result of AI, as you've mentioned, all the scenarios and role plays and things like that we can do now, videos, etc. Certainly, I've been in L&D a long time, and I think we've probably seen more new capabilities this year than we typically see in a decade, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so. So that's all really exciting. I think from an AI perspective, I think what's really stood out for me in the last year really is that I think we've kind of shifted from AI being something that we used to consciously go and ask ChatGPT a question or whatever, to something that's kind of sitting in the background now of everything we do, that co-pilot or autopilot. So in life in generally, it's in our internet searches, it's in our shopping reviews, it's in our business tools too, and more in our learning tools. So it's really kind of becoming like an autopilot in a plane. It's there to kind of guide us as we go. It's switched on by default. We don't have to so much consciously use it anymore. And I think we're really seeing with the organizations that we're working with, at least, that obviously, probably like many of your organizations, for the people on the call as well, they've got an AI strategy aiming to maximize the benefits that AI can bring. But the struggle is that we're all learning as we go. People don't necessarily know how to make the most of it, how to use it, how to adjust to it. And then I think from our perspective, that's really impacted the skills that we've seen managers and leaders need. I think there's kind of a couple of key skill groups. So there's the kind of understanding AI itself, the more technical side of it. So that's really understanding what this autopilot can now do for us, what its capabilities are, what it can't do, how to work with its constraints, that kind of thing. And then the other side of things is that we still need to be the pilot, right? So if that's our autopilot or our co-pilot, we still need to be the pilot of that plane, driving that plane. And there's a couple of big skill groups that we see around that as well. So in particular for managers and leaders, we see that the skills around redesigning the workflow, so the kind of thinking skills around piloting that, things like systems thinking, critical thinking, problem solving, decision making, are really key as AI changes the nature of our work. And then the other side of being a pilot is really thinking about those people leadership skills. So that's kind of how you lead the crew of your plane and how you help them work through that with you. So things like those communication skills, how you reset expectations with people, how you coach people through that, how you help people stay adaptable, and how you help them cope with that constant uncertainty and that constant change, is another challenge. And we see that a lot with the people that we work with, that leaders are really trying to make sense of how work's shifting and what their teams now need from them going forward.
Yeah, I can definitely say from my experience as well, that has been a topic of conversation quite a lot about, yeah, skills are changing, what people need to do is changing. And I think that echoes something that you mentioned earlier, Tommy, about how companies maybe are struggling to hire talent and are pivoting instead to upskilling. Which roles or skills areas do you think the biggest reskilling push is for?
I think this can be almost applied across the board, right? I think there's not a one size fits all answer to this. I think we see this, especially, for entry level positions. I think in software development, you also see this in, customer service, customer facing frontline work, to that extent. So I think there's going to be, there were these moments where we were looking at some of the skills, some of the repetitive, what can be changed or modified or amplified with the application of AI. But I think in general, I think what has surfaced really is the understanding, okay, what does it actually mean? What do we actually need to learn and apply, and then actually have the people take that knowledge and apply it. So I think it's really, you can find a unique use case across all the boards, across all functions, but I think it's very dominant if you look at the entry level positions, the new grads, but also on the other side, if you look at inwards inside the companies, there were a lot of moments of AI literacy. I think they're just generally learning of the usage of AI and the applicable internal use cases, obviously with some guardrails and everything. But I think it's really a very broad picture there.
Yeah, and I think that's something actionable that we can all take, looking at, what we need, where the needs lie, and then working from there. And Louise, you mentioned that this is something that managers are perhaps experiencing, or at least experiencing pressure. So in 2025, there was this look at redesigning work and helping teams deal with uncertainty, especially with all these shifts and changes that we're seeing. I'd be really curious to know, what kind of support do you think managers need during this transition?
Yeah, I think the challenge is that the tech is evolving so quickly that it's evolving faster than human beings are capable of keeping up with generally. So that's a struggle. And that means that managers are dealing with a couple of things. They're having to lead their teams, and it's just not possible for them to have all the answers because things are changing so quickly. So they need to get really comfortable with working with the ambiguity and accepting ambiguity as the norm, not waiting to have clarity, but just continuing to work through that ambiguity. I think that's one thing. And then I think the other thing is managing people who are feeling unsettled. And, again, humans find constant uncertainty difficult to manage. So it's finding those techniques to help people feel grounded, help make sure they've got clear expectations, and that you're coaching them through that change so that they're staying adaptable as well, and that you're bringing them along with you.
Okay, so it makes sense. So getting comfortable with the ambiguity, which I think could nicely, move us along in the conversation to, the learner mindset is perhaps shifting. So we have to be comfortable with ambiguity. But I'd be really curious, from your conversations, from the work that you're doing, have you noticed learners' expectations evolving? Like, what does this mean for learning? What should engaging e-learning look like?
Yeah, I think learner expectations are shifting and have shifted quite a lot. I think our expectations as learners tend to shift with what we're experiencing in the rest of our lives anyway. So I think now that most of us have got an AI co-pilot in our daily work, for example, we're getting used to getting instant answers, and we're getting used to getting those personalized to our specific needs, and that back and forth of getting exactly what we need in the moment that we need it. So I think people's expectations are of learning that's going to be more personalized and more instantaneous too. And I think it kind of leaves us with two key types of learning. So I think On the one hand, we've got more performance support type learning, and that's where AI is really helping organizations turn their internal knowledge into something that people can access really instantly, and that can guide them and give them at an individual level exactly what they need. And then the second type we've got is still that behavior change work. So the skills that really need practice and reflection and probably some human interaction still as well. They're becoming more important too, because as AI is taking over those transactional tasks and the execution work, those human skills around it are becoming even more important in terms of how we do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. That's where we can really shine, especially with so much co-AI or co-pilot or co-help. Tommy, I'm curious, is this something that you've experienced as well, this shift in learner expectations?
Yeah, I think if you kind of look back a couple of years, I think the consumer behavior is making its way into the enterprise too. So I think the expectation is everything instant, fast, personalized. I would even say hyper personalized. So the expectation that your Siri, your ChatGPT that kind of knows all and everything about you, that can also be used, and you want to almost take that in your pocket to the workplace and have that instantaneously available. Obviously, there's a generational shift there too. You have the one generation going to retirement and the next following up with a completely different expectation. So sort of short, fast, interactive, learning feeling like TikTok style, not a 40-minute SCORM, for example. So it's really about like the format and the information that is being digested in the consumer space, that to a certain extent translating that into the enterprise way of learning. And if I can, I probably this will also be applicable to other industries, not necessarily an L&D domain and only enterprise, but I think in general, I think there will be a way we just, maybe even talking to younger generations now, they're not even going to Google anymore. They go straight to ChatGPT. They're not used to going through a list of results. They want the answers now. They want to pop it up now, and more interactive and more proactive at the same time. So I think there's going to be that kind of mindset change happening, and I think companies, L&D, everybody needs to correspond to that, to not be a dusty, outdated solution, to actually feed and create the content that is corresponding with the next generation. So I think, I find that a super exciting time. We're very optimistic here at Easygenerator about AI and the applicable use cases for AI, but also with the good nuance of what actually makes sense, right? So I think that's a really important side. And if you look at also the management side of it, I think you see the almost a new muscle that needs to be trained from managers becoming more coaching, pointing, directional versus the old ways of managing. So I think that's also a fundamental shift that we need to upskill. I think, Louise, you're probably spending a lot of time on the leadership coaching development side of how to deal with the future workforce, the expectations, while at the same time managing another generation and everything in between. And everything plus moving at the almost speed of light, right? If you log off for like a week or two, then you probably see like a fundamental shift that we hadn't seen before. So, all in all, I think all of us collectively at this point in time, we're at a tremendous inflection point. So I think it's really important to understand all these moving pieces and then seeing them all converge into one. And I think as leaders, we need to be reactive, proactive, and corresponding to that in the right way.
Yeah, I think you really hit on something there with expectations and consumer behavior and not wanting to have a dusty solution, I think is how you put it. Because even Google now has the option, if you Google something, that'll put up like an AI answer instead of having to click into all of the links. And I think this is something that's resonating. I see in the chat that Tiffany has mentioned that they couldn't do their job successfully with AI that they've worked so hard to train and ensure that it builds the correct memory to produce what you needed. And I think that's something that a lot of us are experiencing. So thanks for sharing, Tiffany. I think it's a good example of exactly, the heart of what we're trying to get at today, or what we're discussing. Louise, I know that you mentioned learners now expect instant, personalized answers. How is this reshaping the role of L&D when you're working and consulting organizations?
Yeah, I think it is reshaping the role quite a bit. But also, I'm the same as you guys and Tiffany, that ChatGPT is basically my new best friend. I talk to it constantly all day long, and have also worked hard to train it and ensure it has everything I need. So yeah, we've all got that as an expectation now, haven't we? And I think what it means for us in L&D is that we can't just think in terms of programs or courses anymore. We have to be able to think bigger picture than that in terms of workflow and giving people instant and personalized answers. And the big shift I've seen really is L&D people thinking really in terms of enablement rather than just design or development. Even started to see enablement feature quite a lot in job titles now for people in learning and development roles. I don't know if anyone on the chat has enablement in their job title, their job description. I would love to hear it in the chat. But enablement seems to be kind of the way forward. So it's really about us changing from being the main builder, to being the architect or the curator of learning in the organization. So we're no longer going to need to create everything from scratch anymore. We're going to have our AI co-pilots or AI agents and whatever else, to help us do that. And it's going to be much more about organizing that knowledge, and making sure that the AI tools we're using really help people get the information that they need when they need it, which is exciting because it means a lot of those day-to-day questions we might get about how do I do this, how I do that, are going to be increasingly dealt with by those AI-enabled tools. And that means that we in L&D can be freed up to do more of the strategic work, more of the deeper capability building work as well. The kind of leadership skills, the human skills, and the culture that we want in the organization. All those things that AI can't replace.
Yeah, just to build up on that, I think what I like is it's you said enablement, but I also want to say like almost engagement. So L&D becomes an engagement strategy, so not just a learning strategy, right? So I think there's a fundamental shift taking place, and also the negative side of it. If you don't, or if we all don't collectively do that, I think there'll be disengagement and the silent quitting, quietly quitting. And I think that's exactly the opposite of the thing. So I think if we proactively focus on this engagement strategy, and we'll touch the right chord versus just not adhering, not corresponding to that, and then again becoming an irrelevant solution.
Yeah, it makes sense. But I think that, as we go further down this line and follow this thinking, there might be some challenges around learning and development, balancing performance support with that AI driven knowledge. How do you think teams are currently tackling that balance, Louise?
I think for me, the key is recognizing that they serve different purposes. So I think the AI powered kind of performance support, knowledge sharing kind of thing is really brilliant for helping people in the moment, for helping answer a question or guide them through a process or complete a task or something like that. And then I think deeper development programs are more around behavior change. So more of the skills that need more practice, reflection, real conversation, opportunities to apply things, that kind of thing. And AI can still help with those practices. So, you can have AI coaching tools that can help you practice, like Easy Coach and things like that. But then there's also a piece where you bring people together in programs and have the kind of human interaction and human conversation around developing those skills. So I think there's a balance there of kind of thinking about AI really taking on lots of those immediate needs and having the programs really help with the more of the transformational needs. But the key is really getting the two to come together. And then when you've got those two well balanced, then that's really going to give you the maximum way to help people learn and help them apply things.
I think that's certainly helpful for myself and maybe other people in the chat going on this journey as well. And Tommy, I know that you mentioned kind of silent quitting, and what it seems from Louise, it's going to be really important that people are engaged with this training and not just their AI answers. And I'm curious if you could share some insights on how people slowly disengage if L&D doesn't adapt. Maybe what are some of the early warning signs?
Yeah, I think touching on what we talked about earlier about this personalization, and now maybe the opposite of it. If it's not personalized, if it's a very much one size fits all, and it feels like a mundane task that you just have to check off your of your checklist. So if it's not, and especially again here looking at the younger generation, they need to be purpose driven, identity driven. It needs to be very, like, again, short and concise, and also impactful and measurable. I think that's, if we do not adhere, like if we do not follow or able to provide these kind of coachings, for example, in that level that are meaningful and impactful, then we will produce irrelevant content. Attention spans are short, so people will not give it a second chance. Everything is just a click away. So I think, especially with the day and the pressure and the speed of how work is being done at the moment, I think you do want to make this almost entertaining, and it shouldn't feel like a learning. It should feel more natural, more engaging, and more like impactful for yourself, that you're actually investing in yourself and you're making progress. So I think if any AI agent solution, agentic AI, will be able to support you in that and be able to make that very personalized, I think there'll be more of a benefit that you see as a learner. You see, and then the silent quitting, silent becomes irrelevant because you are very much engaged and you're upskilling. And again, from a leadership perspective, I think it's a currency, right? If you look at the skills that somebody brings, it is somewhat treated as a currency that people bring to the job. So therefore, it needs to be invested in, taken care of. And I think it's also becoming apparent to the learner, him or herself, that they do need to upskill and reskill. They see things that AI can cover, and sometimes can be useful, but sometimes can also be a little bit of like a feeling of threat. You see all these doomer projections of how AI taking all the jobs, versus actually looking at how can this actually enhance and empower me to do my work, but 10x, or just focusing, especially also on L&D, focusing on the really strategic topics. And I think that's what we see a lot, the way we apply AI to actually empower L&D. Again, going back to that co-authoring concept, for example, just to name one.
Yeah, I think I agreed there. I think AI is definitely an opportunity. I know there's maybe a lot of doom and gloom, but there's also a lot of opportunity. And I think Stefan has also nicely captured maybe what this means for learning and development. So instead of this instant need to share what you need to know, learning and development teams need to know what to share with their learners, which of course puts us in an interesting position for the year ahead. So I guess we can take a look there at 2026 and what's coming. Louise, in your opinion, what trends do you think will dominate workplace learning in 2026?
Thanks, Ashling. I think we're going to continue to see teams becoming more reliant on AI. So essentially, a team will be part human and part AI agent. And what I mean by that is that AI will take on more and more of the execution work, and the human focus will shift even more to things like the strategy, the judgment, the oversight of the systems. And I think for us in L&D, our roles will continue to evolve as well. So again, we'll continue to move further away from doing all the work ourselves, especially all the design work and all the admin and reporting work and things like that. They're going to much more be done by AI agents. And so we'll also be much more about directing the work in L&D, continuing that move really from being the builders to being the architects of what's going on, like shaping that system, setting those standards and enabling people. And I think that links to the learner experience as well. So I think we're still really at that beginning of that kind of personalized adaptive journey. We've been talking about it for years. I can't remember how long we've been talking about personalized learning for, and it's actually finally now a reality. And we've got all the functionality, chatbots, feedback tools, scenario practice coaching tools that are going to just become more and more prevalent, I think, in how we're offering learning to people and how people can use that. Yeah,
certainly.
I think that means that we're going to be shifting how we think as well around those tools. So it's not just about understanding how to prompt AI or ask it a question. It's going to be bigger picture thinking about how do we organize all these things to come together as a system, and how do things fit together. That's certainly what we're seeing when we're working on management and leadership programs. That's where people are focusing on, like, how are we going to build these strategic capabilities to bring everything together next year.
Yeah, I think you captured it really well. I like what you said, L&D being architects, not builders. And perhaps we're just at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to personalized learning and what's going to be possible. So I'm really excited to see how that evolves. Tommy, is there anything that you would add to trends that you think will dominate the workplace in 2026?
Yeah, I think if I were to make a prediction, I agree with Louise's comments, like the hyper-personalized experience, everything sort of taking a very personalized shape, like with AI now, it just makes sense. It's just the next logical evolution that you receive your learning content in the whatever form and shape you prefer, whether it's podcast, video, avatars, short simulations, real life walkthrough scenarios, and so on. Coaching, I think, is the key element I want to add to that. I think, experience in general is the whole differentiator that we talked about earlier. But the future of learning, in my opinion, will also be more like a coaching than a static course, or just like a walkthrough of a very people are looking for rich media, looking for something entertaining. So things like, what we're working on, things like role play, empowered by AI, very much customized to your needs, allowing people to practice at their own pace whenever they feel like it, and in realistic simulations, almost mimicking exactly the same behavior. Think of the frontline workers, or think of like clear playbooks of how L&D has driven and structured it. And AI is not really replacing humans. I would also agree with that. It's almost like amplifying the human skills. I think the human will still be at the center of it. And I think these AI tools will be available anytime, very effortless. Agent and coachings will be sort of in the room with L&D, or together, empowering L&D and empowering the learner on the other side. And this whole concept of adaptive learning is also, been a term that's been around for quite a while. But I think in this, with this technology all blending it nicely together, I think we can, have a very much real, almost real life scenario. And I think that's what we will be seeing in the future. So again, this very much aligns with our mission, that, this impactful learning experience and the simplicity at it, the easy and Easygenerator, and very much deeply engaging.
Yeah, and I think it's resonating what you just said as well. I see Patrick has commented in the chat that we need to embrace AI. There's still a lot of people who don't do this, and you want to ensure that people are using it the right way, and that the right people are also using it for the right purposes, and that extends to learning and development too, of course. Which I think also maybe brings us back to a point Louise made. Louise, you said that in 2026, teams will be part AI, part human. And I'm curious, what will be the biggest mindset shift that managers need to make to lead them to these, or to be able to lead these hybrid teams effectively?
I think one of those big mindset shifts is, as you said, moving away from seeing AI as a threat and using it, embracing it. I think the way I look at it is that we've got the choice really. Either we see AI as a teammate, or we see AI as a threat, and we have to embrace seeing AI as a teammate. And that's the same for the managers that we work with. We have to help them think about seeing AI as a teammate. And then the other part, I think, that's a really big mind shift change is recognizing that we're constantly reinventing, and that we will always be constantly reinventing. So you can never stand still. And things are always evolving. So it's really getting comfortable with that constant reinvention, not waiting for everything to be clear. That is a big mind shift change as well. I think we find that when we're working with managers, if we can get them to adopt that mindset that they don't need to have all the answers anymore, it's about guiding people through change, about creating clarity when they can, and supporting that adaptability in the team. That's where we see the big shift in terms of success.
I like that. And I think that's a good word, adaptability. So getting comfortable with the change, and being strapped in for the ride, I assume, or maybe not even strapped in, maybe leading the way or paving the way. And I think one of those big changes, Tommy, you've touched on, was hyper personalized learning or adaptive learning. I'm curious, do you have any first steps that you would suggest to organizations that want to move in that direction?
I think the first step obviously needs to be embracing and welcoming this, that this is more than a trend, but it's actually happening, and it's happening right in front of us. I think we, as the company that has coined the employee-generated learning term, the focus on the subject matter expert to go straight to the knowledge, I think that's I think the most important side of it, because if you want to hyper-personalize it, then you obviously need to go to the internal knowledge carrier. And it's to embed the people with the knowledge, so the SMEs, into the content creation process, whatever the content will be. As we talked about, podcasts or avatars or videos, or even training another coach to train others, so that amplifying, multiplying effect. I think generative AI's role should be to lower that barrier for the content creation side of it. Again, empowering L&D and the actual SME. And not replacing the human element. I think that's really important to embrace. There's also to, almost start a movement inside the company to cultivate that kind of thinking, because what you do not want to do is to go out with a small group only and then face internal blocks and challenges. So I think it needs to be a collective movement, and then slowly showing the benefits of it, and then making it applicable to the entire organization. So we have things like making it localized also to specific audiences in multiple languages, for example. We also do that very easily, so they can hyper-localize in different languages too. And this whole concept of democratized learning, I think that's also a very important side of it to really understand, like how this then flows into the delivery of the hyper-personalized learning engagement strategy. And of course, you need some buy-in from the executives to support that concept. So I think some kind of positive lobbying on the executive side wouldn't do any harm. It needs to be also coming from the top, that this is a strategic and important move. Again, going back to the very first part of our conversation today, that the L&D department is becoming very much strategic and should almost advise the C-suite on what are the strategic elements that the company needs to focus on. And I think for a very hyper-personalized experience, that's a very strong argument. By showing and demoing it, I think that will clearly mark the first mark to then slowly land and expand within an organization. That's kind of my recommendation I would give. Yeah.
I think it's a good place to start. And it's also interesting what you said about bringing the whole organization along, because you need people to use AI properly for it to be effective. You need buy-in for it to be supported, but then also AI isn't, an all-being, all-seeing entity. We also feed it with information. So having experts contribute their knowledge is also really, really beneficial. I would like to go back to Louise, but before I ask the next question, I do want to say we will be doing a Q&A in a few minutes. So if you do have any questions or your own predictions, please feel free to pop them into the chat. But there was something I wanted to pick up on, or a thread I wanted to pull on. Louise, you mentioned that co-creation with AI will be growing, and I think that echoes on some of what Tommy said. How do you think learning and development teams should prepare to manage AI agents or AI-powered systems?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it can sound exciting and it can also sound slightly terrifying, depending which way you look at it. I think it gives L&D the opportunity to step more into that strategic space and to really then think about the overall system, how we shape it, how we use AI to free up time to focus on the stuff that AI can do, and then recognize the parts where we really need a human. And I think that can sound overwhelming if you don't know where to start. I think the first place to start is really thinking around what can AI do and what do you need a human to do? And then that can build to focus on how these AI capabilities come together to fit together as a system. So we're kind of moving away from how do I prompt AI, how do I ask it a question, to how does everything come together? How do these agents work? How do they connect together? And how do I organize them to support learning and performance? But I'd say start small, start simple. Just think about, okay, what can AI do? What could we automate? Where can that fit? And where do we really still need a human being to be involved? And that can like break it down to feel slightly less daunting or slightly less overwhelming, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it is important not to feel too overwhelmed that AI will be the norm, and it is scary to deal with strange. I don't think as humans we have been evolved to embrace change so comfortably, but if we do want to adapt and evolve, we have to do just that. I do have a final question, but also your questions are really important. I see some comments coming in through the chat, so feel free to drop them there, and we'll get to them in just a second. But if I can, I would like to ask Tommy one more question. I know that we're touching on when AI can play a role, when humans can play a role, and Tommy, you mentioned AI coaches will become the norm in the future. And I'm curious if you have any safeguard or design principles that you would suggest organizations consider to make that change more comfortable.
Yeah, I think the important side of it, again, here is like to acknowledge that this is happening. I think we are, in a way, somewhat training, same as Louise said, like, speaking to ChatGPT in a humanized way to almost, have the agent know a lot about you, but also an agent that kind of learns with you along the way, along the challenges that you're facing. But on an enterprise, on a company level, obviously there needs to be some fundamental safeguarding, ensuring that the learning content is actually accurate, that it's ethical, and aligned with the company policy. So I think you do want to have that also in some kind of a not completely free flow environment to then become, again, meaningless or uncontrolled. So I think it needs to be governed to some extent. So here at Easygenerators, our approach is, safeguard the content's integrity, keeping the human in the loop. I think that's something we've heard a lot of times, and I think it's really important to double click on that, because I think, especially when it gets to creating content that is then spread out to multiple people and then manifested in their heads and then actually applied, it's really important to be at the center, putting the actual knowledge carrier at the center of the creation. And again, ensuring that the speed of AI is always governed by some accountability and the expertise of the employee. I think that's the really the important side of it, to understand, like, what are the boundaries there. There needs to be some level of experimentation, I think, as we all kind of still figure this out. But I also think, like, there's a good side of it to look at it, because I think we touched on this earlier, this personalized, the coach being a very personalized companion that has the best intention for you to grow. That's what a coach technically and by definition should have. And you also see some higher completion rates or some higher engagement. And I think McKinsey has done some research on that and discovered that the engagement rate actually goes up. So I think it's almost very, very clear that the agent, if applied correctly in a controlled, governed environment, will have the best intentions and will have the best impact. And I think the coaches can be trained. So I think that's another very important thing. We're also investing into in the AI, in the technology of AI to deliver that custom personalized coaching experience.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. So when the AI is informed, it will behave with the best of intentions. I see some questions coming in as well, so we'll move over to those. But yeah, thank you for sharing those. I think they're really helpful we all start to do some planning, hopefully in the coming weeks ahead of 2026. We will have time for a question and answer, of course. I know that we want to touch on all the topics that are important to us all as a community. And I see that Klaus has asked about our takes on how AI will help structure the results of hyper-localized or hyper-individualized learning, because it can be challenging to measure the effectiveness of AI. And it's important that we look at analyzing and structuring those results and progress. I'd be curious, Louise, if you have any thoughts on this or anything that you could contribute to Klaus's point there.
Sure. Measuring learning effectiveness and training effectiveness has been an ongoing challenge in the industry. And I think it continues to be so with hyper-personalized or personalized learning. I think probably one of the simplest ways to look at whether something's working is whether people are going back to the tool or the resource voluntarily. So if you've got something out there that's providing them with personalized learning, if they're coming back to it and using it over and over again, then that gives you a good indication that it's genuinely helpful, and then they're finding it useful and therefore it's working. In terms of looking at the actual results from a business perspective, it depends really what it's there to do. I think, generally speaking, personalized learning's there to help somebody solve a problem, or help them do something more quickly, or help them complete a task more efficiently, or maybe help them make a decision. So it's thinking about what are those things you're trying to get people to do, and then is that happening? Is that working? Finding a way to measure whether those things are happening to then tie that back, I would say.
Yeah, I think I have seen, or not I think, I know I have seen organizations moving in that direction as well, probably like zooming out and looking at the bigger picture, in addition to, let's say, how does this learning resonate, or how many people are using this training, but looking at what impact that has on a bigger level. So let's say, I know we had somebody mention client service training in the chat. So I don't know, after deploying a certain learning plan, did we see the number of tickets that we have reducing, or a faster time to resolution? So I think there's room for that too. I'm curious, Tommy, do you have anything to add there when it comes to measuring learning progress and results?
Yeah, I think given that the AI is so smart and is tracking everything, obviously in a fully governed way, I think there will be finally the moment where we can make this really measurable and impactful. So, for example, we with our coaching value proposition, the Easy Coach, we have a possibility to actually make that measurable, but not only for the learner, but also for if wanted, also for management, and then also seeing it obviously in the downstream numbers of wherever the training was on. So I think, and people shouldn't be afraid of that. I think you do want to see the impact, right? So I think also from the learner side, there's going to be a moment of seeing that actual impact of your learning experience, and then also maybe tying it back to sort of performance reviews, or like general development and career progression and all these things. So I think it will be welcomed. There may be some, maybe hesitations in the beginning, which is normal with these kind of evolutions. But I think overall, the moment will come where we will embrace this and welcome this and use this in a way where this becomes again a currency that I talked about. And I think that's the moment of AI amplifying humans versus replacing or taking anything away from it.
If I can add as well, just on measurement before we move on, in case it's helpful. The model that we use with our programs when we're running our programs is we look at intake, insight, and impact in terms of measuring how something's gone. So intake is how many people are using it. So that comes back to, are they going back and using it again? Are they repeat using it? Do they use it? Are they taking it up? Then insight is really, do they like it? What are they saying about it? Are they finding it useful? So those two things are relatively easy to do, big picture across everything, to look at, are people using it, and ask them, do you like it? Are you finding it useful? And then the final impact piece is much harder to do. So we tend to be much more selective about where we measure impact. So we find pretty impossible to measure impact for everything you're providing learning for in an organization. So it's really about thinking, like, what are the key projects that we want to dig in and really look for the impact for those things, just in case that model's helpful.
I think it will be, from the conversations that I have. I know this is a big conversation when rolling out new learning strategies. I'd be really curious, as well in the chat. Does that resonate? Is there anything else to follow up on? And Louise, I think you could perhaps provide more insight as well for a question by Patrick, who's asking about AI trainers. So this is already a thing for Patrick, about using AI for difficult conversations and practicing in advance on where you can improve. And we're curious to know if there's a good way that you can start using AI to train first-line leaders.
Yeah, we do actually. So this year we recently embedded in our programs, encouraging people, at this point, we're just encouraging people to use their own AI co-pilot, whether that's Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever, depending on the organization that we're working with, to practice certain skills. So for example, in a management program, we'll teach people skills like coaching, having coaching conversations. We'll teach them models for that, and we'll have them practice in the facilitator-led event. We'll teach them things like giving people feedback. We have a framework for that, and they'll practice that again in the classroom or virtual classroom. But then we'll also give them prompts that they can use in their own AI tool so that they can go away and practice, and then we give them assignments to actually go and practice with each other, and then go and practice with a real human, a person in their team. So it kind of builds from, you know, practice with your AI first, practice with another human, even look in the mirror and practice, and then practice with the actual team member that you want to give this feedback to or have this coaching conversation with, so that you build the skill that way. And then I know that those tools are being developed, certainly from an Easygenerator perspective as we speak as well, to actually formalize that coaching tool, so you can have it sit in your own Easy Coach tool, for example. But you can kind of, you know, use workarounds using prompts at the moment until you have the more sophisticated tools out there. I think it works really well, and it's really amazing how good it is at chatting with you, giving you feedback, telling what you did well, telling you what you can improve. Love it.
I think that is certainly helpful. Thanks for sharing. I know the time is ticking by and we have some more questions. So perhaps, Tommy, you can help with this one. Michelle has shared an observation about AI, that it's not necessarily perfect and it can hallucinate. What would your take be on this?
That's true. I think it's a technology that's still evolving, and we're right in the middle of it, right in the middle of the workshop almost. And I think it's also very experimental and exploratory. So I do think there is moments where the AI has been hallucinating, but if you look at it from a bigger picture, this has been improving version over version model, and especially at the frontier models that are being developed, you see this becoming better and better. And you know, there was a time when prompt engineering was, you know, and then the models actually, so the whole saying was, oh, we all have to learn prompt engineering, but at some point the tool just gotten better at the just in general, like going back and thinking. You know, sometimes you see the Gemini's going back and thinking for 7 or 8 or 10 minutes, but it's heavy computational power happening in the background. So I think it is there are moments of hallucination, and it's all about the fine tuning for the time being, but I think we'll get beyond that point where the fine tuning, or like there will be less hallucination due to some learning plus the fine tuning over time that will just get better. But I think as long as we acknowledge that and know that technology is not perfect, you know, and then it's fine. And I think we also need to know the limitations of it. And maybe to add up on that also, the AI is not the silver bullet for everything. I think people will still appreciate highly the human connection and the empathy that comes with a human-to-human interconnection. And we've experienced this too, like even on video conversations. It's just a different vibe if you meet somebody in person. If it's becoming more like leadership development, Louise, in your domain, but also on employee feedback and growing the younger generation and the workforce, the reskilling, all of this together that we talked about. I think there needs to be this human element also at the core of it, and technology being the supporting element, but at the same time equipping the learner with something that they can use at their own time and at their own comfort in the format that they appreciate, and they digest the learning better and can actually apply it. So I think that's again, you know, as long as we acknowledge that the technology is evolving, and that we at this inflection point, I think it's fine. But yeah, I think everything is from the hallucination that we've seen in the past to what we see now. It's been almost light years in between.
Yeah, 100%. I think I agree, especially as well now that there's more options to inform the tools and to share the information that it needs. So you can ensure that the answers that you're getting are better, but it should change in, I would say, the years to come, but at the rate of change in the months even to come. I see that Athena also has a question on how do you address algorithmic bias and lack of diversity in AI developments. I don't know, Louise, do you have any insight on this?
Yeah, I think I don't have an easy answer, but I think it comes back to what Tommy said around not just relying on the AI as definitely true and definitely correct, and actually applying critical thinking alongside using AI. So it is about thinking about the information that you put in the first place, asking the right questions to get the right information. And then I think it's thinking about then analyzing and critical thinking what you get back. So the way I think about my AI best friend is it's like a graduate trainee type level person helping me. So it's brilliant, but it may be a bit naive. It doesn't necessarily get everything right. I still have to take responsibility for what comes out of it. I still have to check I'm comfortable with it. I still have to make sure that, you know, I stand by it. So I've still got to go through that critical thinking space around that. I know there's been lots of issues raised about diversity, and how I think the AI companies are addressing that as well. So I'm keen to like keep an eye on how that evolves. But I certainly think it's one to watch out for, and just make sure you apply your own human judgment as to what you're doing.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And I think this is perhaps an area that when we're looking at training and skills, AI, literacy, but being able to use AI is a big one. And for us to not lose that critical thinking piece, and just accept what AI says, but to, action our human. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't have the exact words, but to use our human touch when we're looking at what AI feeds us.
We can't switch our brains off yet, unfortunately. We have to keep our brains firmly turned on.
Yeah, but that's what sets us apart. We have a very very powerful computer in each of our heads. Perhaps you have time for one last question as well. I know that Abdul has mentioned perhaps some concerns in the future about operating AI and the lack of power sources to operate to serve all of our goals. Tommy, do you have any input on this?
Oh, this is a big topic. Obviously, data centers and energy and operating data centers. I mean, you can see what's happening around the world. Like we can't almost keep up with building data centers at this point. So it's a heavy computational hunger that we need to feed. So I think this will be the limitation if we cannot build those data centers fast enough, then and the energy resources. I think that's another one of those interesting things that humanity has to solve, to almost have energy as an unlimited supply to then operate these models. But I think will we hit a limit? Probably not, because I think the economic incentive is just too high for businesses to not continue building these data centers. You see this AI race between the incumbents, the Microsofts and the Googles and Grok and all the great companies that are building and trying to capitalize and win the AI race. I think they have a high incentive to building the data centers to then deliver on this computational ambition that we have. And there's going to be much more, if you think of we just talking about L&D, but if you think about all the other fields that are also in medicine and generally in research, biology, and all these high computational power that needs to be fed. So I think this is a bigger topic that we probably won't be able to cover. But for now, I would say as long as this for the purposes of large language models, the way we're using this, I think we will be fine for the foreseeable future. But data centers are being built right as we speak all over the world.
That's a good one. I know that, there's a few more questions, so we'll get to those. There's definitely one more, but if anyone does have to drop off, if you have topics, maybe bigger discussions that we didn't get around to today that you would like to see discussed in 2026, please feel free to drop them in the chat or to send us a message, as we will be working on them in the coming few weeks as well. But before we log off, I see a good question that I think will be helpful, and that is, do either you, Louise or Tommy, have any recommendations for AI websites or tools that can work really well when creating L&D content?
Easygenerator is quite good.
I would say try it.
I don't particularly have any. I personally have worked across different large language models to help both design content and get ideas for ways to deliver things more effectively, and I find them all really good. The paid versions are generally better than the free versions, but other than that, I like to kind of try different ones and get different ideas from them all.
I want to say maybe it's more of a mindset to be very curious, it's not a specific tool, but just be very experimental. Never before have we been able to just do everything the way you do it now. You can vibe code, you can say you can speak I don't know who said it, but the future of programming will be English. I think it essentially summarizes it well, because you can communicate with technology now in a conversational mode. And I think what my recommendation would be to just be explorative, play around with tools, give it a try, play with the free version, play with the paid version, just start experimenting on things, maybe building something yourself that you normally wouldn't be thinking that you're able to do it, and just trying to learn the technology. I think it's fast moving, too fast to just be waiting and sitting and standing on the sideline waiting for it to roll out, because it can be used and applied by everyone. And then use your little bits and pieces here and there. And I think, yeah, it's just a mindset and a curiosity that I would encourage everybody to just continue doing that.
I agree. And I would say most tools that you have probably have some AI component at this stage. So to see what's out there, if I go back to Louise, if you are using Easygenerator, I would like to shout out the course builder. It's really, really helpful if you want to speed up the process of creation, or even enable those who maybe have never created learning to transform what they have. So definitely options to consider. We are over time. I'm impressed to see so many of you still with us. So I want to say a big thank you for joining, but also a huge thank you to Louise and Tommy for sharing today.